Hello everyone, Ace here, and today we're going to be covering an absolute odyssey of a tale that is the Ion Fury controversy. This is something I've been wanting to talk about ever since it started, since I did actually do a live stream on this game, as some of you may recall. However, I always had something of a gut feeling that I should probably wait until more news arrives. And it turns out that this was a wise decision, because so much has happened since the controversy first broke out. Before I go any further, I'd like to thank Mark Ernst for first informing me of this issue though, because until his post, I didn't realize that this was actually going on. I'd like to also thank Miss Sophia Narwitz for doing an absolutely amazing article, which I suggest that you should all read, as it does provide a rather comprehensive amount of information on what has happened. And as such, I will be using it as my main source here. Anyways, the controversy kicked off when a ResetEra user known as 25,000 created a topic that discussed some supposedly controversial things that the developers had said in their Discord. Things like SJWs are nuts, or disagreeing with the concept of a parent forcing their child to change gender even against the child's will. Things of which most sane normal individuals would likely agree. In fact, the spiciest thing that any of these devs said, if you can call it that, was one of them questioning the wisdom of having a gender change while also being depressed at the exact same time. Now, I wouldn't exactly say it's completely unreasonable to disagree with these devs on that particular topic, however, it is completely unreasonable to try to get them fired over it, which is exactly what ResetEra tried to do in response. And while they were attempting to do this, some of them of course decided to delve into the game and find anything at all that they might find offensive, even if being offended meant complaining about a soap bottle that had been renamed from Olay to Ogay, or even if it meant finding a word that had a word in it that they didn't like, that you actually had to clip through the game to actually find in the first place. Yes, that's right, these people were so determined to be offended at things about the game that they actually decided to start clipping through the levels just to find content that they didn't agree with. Which means that they were actively, of course, looking to be offended. And also, if these people can get upset about a word that merely has another word within it that they don't like, then I hate to see their reaction to words like warfage. Anyways, in response to the criticisms and the small number of negative reviews that the ResetEra crowd had left, 3D Realms decided to bend the knee. They did this by first publicly apologizing to the ResetEra crowd, and then they decided to throw their own devs under the bus by requiring them all to undergo sensitivity training, as well as forcing them to change the game just to appease the ResetEra crowd as well. Finally, 3D Realms decided to create a zero-tolerance policy that essentially threatened any developers that stepped out of line, with the consequence being that the developer company was no longer allowed to work with 3D Realms. And at which point Voidpoint also promised to donate $10,000 to charity. Now at first I was a little bit concerned about the charity thing because I was under the impression that Voidpoint was actually forced by 3D Realms to actually donate the money on 3D Realms' behalf. And while I'm not against charity itself, I am against the idea of forcing someone else to donate for you just because you're the publisher and they're the developers under your heel. But since it's come out that Voidpoint is actually completely willing to donate the money on their own, then I have absolutely no issue there. However, there is no denying the fact that 3D Realms was forcing Voidpoint to actually do things against its own will anyways, which included changing the content for some utterly ridiculous reasons. In fact, as a great example, Sophia Narwitz provides a quote from one of the developers saying, and I quote, "If we had actually done everything their PR wanted us to do, we'd be double plus F'd compared to where we are now." And believe it or not, Voidpoint actually made a few tweets that shared this particular attitude. If you want to pirate it, it's only like 95 megabytes. You should check it out. We worked really hard on it and it's a cool game. F politics. And yes, I do realize the irony in the fact that YouTube would likely demonetize my video if I said any of these profanities that they have mentioned, but nevertheless, I do actually have to applaud the defiance that they took against 3D Realms even under such a dire situation. However, this was not enough to stem the coming tide of negative reviews and backlash that the game had received from its own community. Now, to be fair, 3D Realms definitely did indeed deserve criticism for its actions here, as they threw the developers of Voidpoint under the bus in this situation. Unfortunately, most of the criticism and reaction seems to have hurt Voidpoint more than 3D Realms. I won't mind admitting that I actually delivered some criticism myself, however, I actually tried to make the effort to do this towards 3D Realms rather than Voidpoint. And I personally did this by contacting 3D Realms through email, which they actually have on their homepage anyways. Now, in most of these kinds of controversies, this is where the story would have ended. However, some more interesting developments have since taken place. For a start, it has since been discovered that the user from ResetEra known as 25,000 is actually an internet troll who decided to create the outrage mob in an effort to get back at Voidpoint and 3D Realms. But why did he do it, you may ask? Well, his motive, it turns out, was that he was under the impression that Voidpoint was wanting to already cater to the social justice community by changing Shelly Bombshell's character design. This is because the original Shelly Bombshell design from the 1990s was far more sexualized in nature. And thus he appears to have believed that Voidpoint decided to change the character design in order to appeal to the perpetually offended. And as such, this controversy was his attempt at revenge. But really think about the implications of this situation and how it ultimately backfires on ResetEra as well. The simple truth is that this controversy was caused by someone that they would consider to be a misogynist, wanting to, in their eyes, enforce the patriarchy, which means that they themselves, being members of this outrage mob, are also by their own logic and definition, quote, enforcers of the patriarchy as well. The second bit of social justice irony here is that by the logic of SJWs, since 3D Realms bent the knee in this situation, they themselves have thus already violated their own zero tolerance policy, because the outrage mob itself was again stirred by someone that wanted Shelly Bombshell to be more sexualized. Now, regular viewers of mine will of course know that I am no fan of modern political correctness. I am, however, a fan of pointing out the inherent hypocrisies whenever they arise from social justice, and this seems to be a classic case of that in practice. Which brings me to the good news that has just come out today, that being that 3D Realms has decided to reverse their decision on removing some of the content that the social justice community did not agree with. And this, in my eyes, is a victory for gamers on the whole, as it demonstrates that the hold that the social justice community once had on the video game industry is slowly but surely slipping. And despite the incessant mewling from ResetEra and the game journalists that have tried to back them, the Voidpoint developers seem absolutely determined on standing their ground on this issue, even going so far as to call out some of the nonsense spewed by game journalists who work for publications such as PC Gamer. And in response, the community for this game has once again decided to side with the developers, by not only changing the reviews from negative back to positive, but also heaping praise on the developers in the Steam forums. No doubt sales are also going back up as well. Now, having covered the history up to this point anyways on this particular controversy, I'm sure many of you are well aware of what my thoughts exactly are on this whole issue. For a start, I believe that 3D Realms should have stood its ground alongside Voidpoint and supported its developers. The fact that they attempted to bend the knee at first was indeed a mistake. And it was a mistake that unfortunately for which Voidpoint received the majority of the punishment. Of course, I'm not exactly a huge fan of ResetEra either on this, as their behavior has been nothing short of utterly reprehensible. The fact of the matter is that even though the troll was exposed, they've decided to try to defend him anyways, because let's face it, a rule for thee and not for me. But regardless, I do definitely feel sorry for Voidpoint in all of this. These guys definitely did not deserve to go through all of the crap that they've received. And I wish them the absolute best of luck when it comes to their game. On the subject of 3D Realms, now that they've decided to actually change their mind and start standing with the devs to a point, I am willing to at least try to forgive them for this, if for the sake of Voidpoint itself at least. And as such, I am once again willing to buy some of their content when they do decide to release it. I'll also admit that I've decided to do this because I do not want to stoop to the level of the social justice community, as attempts to make amends do not tend to satisfy them in the least. But as I've already said, I do wish the absolute best for the devs themselves, and look forward to the expansion packs and additional content that they've already mentioned that they intend to make. In any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.